When Karen ordered the removal of my beloved Harley-Davidson bike, she was certain she'd finally silenced me for good. She called it an obnoxious nuisance and claimed it violated noise regulations, ordering her cronies to auction it off without hesitation. But Karen didn't anticipate the storm she was about to unleash. Her hasty actions triggered a legal whirlwind that would dismantle her authority piece by piece. That bike wasn't just any Harley, it was company property. By unlawfully selling it, Karen had unknowingly targeted Harley-Davidson's CEO. Karen's arrival at the HOA meeting hall was no less dramatic than an army marching into battle. Clipboard in hand and smugness radiating from every pore, she strutted in, ready to gloat about her victory. But what she didn't realize was that she'd just picked a fight she couldn't win, and by the time I stood up, her downfall had already begun. The clock ticked toward 3 a.m., but sleep was a distant thought. I couldn't stop replaying the events of the day. Karen and Tom thought they'd won, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. By sunrise, I'd already decided. I wasn't going to let Karen Whitmore and Tom Peterson get away with their racket. At 9 a.m. sharp, I parked my car across the street from Peterson's towing lot. I could see my Harley behind the chain-link fence, gleaming under the morning sun, mocking me with its absence. I wasn't here to negotiate. I was here to document everything. Pulling out my phone, I started snapping photos. The impound lot sign, the suspiciously fresh paint on Tom's tow truck logo, the pristine condition of my bike. My phone buzzed with another text from Karen. Impound fees increased by $1,100 daily. Office hours until 5 p.m. Better hurry. The audacity of this woman was unreal. As I stood there, a familiar voice startled me. "That your bike, Mr. Z's?" It was old Mr. Johnson from next door, carrying a bag of groceries. "Heard about what Karen pulled? She did the same thing to my niece last year, towed her truck over parking violations. Cost her nearly $2,000 to get it back." I frowned, my suspicion deepening. "Did she use Peterson's towing?" Mr. Johnson nodded. "Same racket every time. Tom impounds the vehicle, charges outrageous fees, and Karen backs him up with HOA rules she makes up as she goes. Folks around here call it the tow tax." My jaw tightened. This was bigger than just my bike hate, was systematic exploitation, and Karen and Tom were profiting at the expense of the neighborhood. Back at home, I dove into more research. The HOA bylaws Karen had quoted in her notice seemed off too convenient, too recent. Digging deeper, I found the revision date, barely 3 weeks old. Strangely, every revision seemed tailored to one purpose of targeting high-value vehicles and properties. My findings led me straight to Karen's desk drawer. If she'd slipped something there during our confrontation, the security camera in the HOA office would have caught it. And so, I submitted a formal request for access to the footage, citing HOA transparency regulations. I could already imagine Karen fuming when she saw the request. The emergency board meeting that evening was tense. Karen sat at the head of the table, her pearl necklace glinting under the fluorescent lights. Tom Peterson lounged in a corner, looking as smug as ever. I took my seat, determined to keep my composure. Karen started the meeting with her usual condescending tone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're here to discuss vehicle policy updates and the importance of maintaining community standards." I raised my hand, cutting her off. "Karen, before we proceed, I'd like to address a few inconsistencies in the recent HOA revisions." Her smile tightened. "Mr. Z's, this meeting is not the time to discuss personal grievances." "Oh, it's not personnel, it's legal," I shot back, holding up a folder. "Your revisions targeting high-value vehicles weren't approved by the majority of HOA members, violating state governance laws. Additionally, all towing contracts were awarded exclusively to Peterson's Towing without competitive bidding, a direct breach of financial transparency." "Then why did the HOA security camera capture Tom slipping documents into your desk drawer during office hours?" I added, my voice sharp. Tom sat up, his confidence visibly shaken. "That's private HOA business," he stammered. "Not if it involves illegal towing fees and fabricated policies," I said. "I've submitted a request for the security footage. It's only a matter of time before the Housing Authority reviews it." Karen slammed her hand on the table, her pearl necklace bouncing against her collarbone. "This meeting is adjourned. If you have issues, file them through proper channels." "Oh, I already have," I replied. "Enjoy explaining yourself when the auditors arrive." The meeting dissolved into chaos as neighbors began murmuring, exchanging glances. Karen stormed out, her heels clicking like gunshots against the tile floor. Tom followed, muttering under his breath. The storm wasn't over yet, but I could feel the tide turning. Karen and Tom had relied on secrecy and intimidation to maintain their grip on the community, but their house of cards was starting to collapse. And the best part? They still didn't know about my role at Harley-Davidson. That revelation was coming, and it would be glorious. I settled in for another sleepless night, my mind racing with plans. By morning, the sun rose on a neighborhood already buzzing with whispers. Karen thought she could intimidate her way out of this mess, but she underestimated the power of a determined homeowner and a CEO with a mission. Karen spun around, her face a mixture of fury and panic as I approached her, surrounded by the rumble of hundreds of bikes now dominating our suburban street. Her phone was clutched so tightly in her hand that I half expected it to crack. "What is this circus, Mr. Z's?" she shrieked, her voice breaking as she gestured wildly to the swarm of riders lining the block. I crossed my arms, my expression calm but deliberate. "It's a peaceful protest," I said, my voice steady, but loud enough to drown out her frantic calls for Tom. "Every single one of these bikes meets noise regulations, Karen. No one is violating your precious HOA rules." Karen's garden hose still lay limp at her feet, water pooling around her designer slippers. Her perfect pink bathrobe had darkened at the hem from the puddles, but she didn't seem to notice. Instead, her face reddened further as she bellowed, "This is harassment. You'll regret this." I shrugged, feigning indifference. "Funny? That's exactly what our neighbors said when they got targeted by your illegal towing scam." I thought it was time for a little spotlight on what's really been happening in our peaceful community. I motioned toward the crowd of bikes, and the news van now parked prominently in front of Peterson's towing. At that very moment, Tom came barreling down the street, his tow truck skidding to a halt just shy of his driveway. He jumped out, his face pale as he realized the scene in front of him. The flash of cameras from the news crew lit up the frustration etched on his face. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his voice cracking. "Public accountability," I replied, turning to face him. "You and Karen have some explaining to do. You know about those fake bylaws, the inflated fees, the vehicles auctioned off without notice." Tom's bravado faltered, his jaw tightening as he glanced toward Karen for support, but she was too busy screaming into her phone, presumably to the police. "They're everywhere!" she shouted, her voice shrill. "Get here now, or I'll—" Her words died in her throat as she realized I was holding up the very violation notice she'd crafted. "Don't forget this little masterpiece," I said, waving the paper. "The rule you quoted? It was never approved by the board, Karen. You just made it up to suit your scheme." Karen finally lost it. "You can't prove anything," she snapped, storming toward me with a trembling finger pointed at my chest. "All you have are baseless accusations and a bunch of noisy bikers causing chaos. Rules are rules, Mr. Z's." "Oh, I have more than accusations," I shot back, pulling out a folder thick with certified documents. "I have bank statements showing HOA funds funneled to Peterson's towing, property records proving you bought homes from families you financially ruined, and storage fees 3 times the legal limit under state law. Shall I keep going?" Tom stepped forward, desperation in his tone. "This is all a misunderstanding. Karen didn't know about the storage fees." "Really?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Because Karen's husband runs the LLC that collects those fees." "What was it you said, Karen? Just following the rules? Funny how that doesn't seem to apply when it's your pockets being lined." The sound of sirens punctuated the growing tension. The police arrived just as one of the news reporters began interviewing Kevin Chen, who had brought copies of the courthouse records revealing the scale of the scam. Karen's head snapped toward the commotion, and she realized her carefully constructed facade was collapsing. "You called the cops on yourselves, Karen," I said, smirking. "I mean, what's one more criminal act to add to the list?" You've ruined everything," she screeched, her voice cracking as she lunged forward, her phone slipping from her grasp. "You think you can humiliate me like this? I'll have you sued into oblivion." "You're welcome to try," I said, staring her down. "But I'm pretty sure your lawyer will be too busy defending you against state corruption charges." The officers approached Karen and Tom, their expressions grim as they began questioning the pair. Karen dissolved into a fit of tears, her screeches turning into garbled excuses. Tom tried to deflect, but the mounting evidence left him nowhere to hide. I stepped back, watching the chaos unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and relief. The neighbors who had been silent for so long began stepping forward, sharing their stories with the reporters and officers. The Garcia family, the Jacksons, even old Mrs. Chen. Each testimony added another nail to the coffin of Karen and Tom's empire of greed. As the officers escorted Karen and Tom to the waiting patrol cars, I couldn't resist one last comment. "Looks like you'll finally get to see those HOA rules from a whole new perspective behind bars." Karen's glare could have melted steel, but it was powerless now. The reign of the HOA queen was over, and justice had finally been served. I raised my hand for quiet, cutting through the chaos of the packed community center. "As your neighbor," I began, my voice strong and steady, "and as CEO of Harley-Davidson, I think it's time we finally take a stand against corruption in our community." Karen stood frozen at the front of the room, her designer sunglasses sliding slightly down her nose, failing to mask the panic spreading across her face. Tom, on the other hand, was visibly sweating, clutching the back of a chair like it was the only thing keeping him upright. "I've spent weeks uncovering the truth," I continued, pulling out the stack of documents I'd gathered. "These aren't just baseless accusations, these are facts. Over the past 5 years, Karen Whitmore and Tom Peterson have stolen over $200,000 from our neighborhood. They've auctioned off vehicles without proper notice, extorted families with illegal towing fees, and forced people out of their homes for profit." "You can't do this," Karen snapped, her voice sharp and cracking with hysteria. She stepped forward, shaking a manicured finger in my direction. "This is slander. None of this is true." "Really?" I replied calmly, holding up my phone for everyone to see. "This security footage begs to differ." I pressed play, and the screen behind me lit up with the grainy but clear video from my garage, showing Karen directing Tom's tow truck to my bike at 6 a.m., a full 42 hours before the notice period had expired. Gasps filled the room as the timestamp glared on screen like an unflinching spotlight. Karen's composure finally shattered. "Fine!" she screamed, her voice reaching a shrill pitch that echoed through the room. "You people deserve it. Your tacky cars and bikes ruin our community. I was trying to protect us." "By stealing from us?" I shot back, my tone icy. "By taking advantage of families and profiting off their hardship. That's not protection, Karen, that's exploitation." The crowd erupted, voices rising in anger as neighbors began shouting out their grievances. Mrs. Garcia stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "They towed my son's bike on Christmas Eve. We had to pay nearly $500 to get it back." "And my Mustang," Mr. Thompson added, his voice shaking with rage. "They auctioned it off while I was recovering from surgery." One by one, neighbors came forward, their voices blending into a chorus of outrage. The stories poured out: the Martinez family's work van, the Patel's car towed during their daughter's graduation party, even Mrs. Chen's gardening tools. Each testimony added weight to the growing mountain of evidence against Karen and Tom. Suddenly, the doors at the back of the room opened, and Mr. Roberts, our forensic accountant, walked in carrying 3 heavy boxes of documents. "Over the past 5 years," he announced, his voice commanding, "Karen and Tom have embezzled HOA funds, conducted illegal vehicle auctions, and funneled money into offshore accounts. Every single transaction is documented right here." Karen, realizing her kingdom was crumbling, made a desperate attempt to flee. She grabbed her designer bag and bolted toward the exit, but the 2 police officers who had been waiting at the back of the room stepped in, blocking her path. "Karen Whitmore," one of them said, his voice calm but firm. "You're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and illegal towing practices." "No!" Karen screamed, her voice raw as she struggled against the officers. "This is a mistake. You can't do this to me. I was just following the rules." I stepped forward, locking eyes with her one last time. Rules you made up, Karen. Rules you used to hurt the very people you were supposed to protect. As the officers led her out in handcuffs, the crowd erupted into cheers. For the first time in years, the community felt united not under fear, but under a shared sense of justice. Tom tried to slip out quietly, but another officer stopped him before he reached the door. I turned back to the crowd, holding up the final document, the one listing all the homes Karen and Tom had stolen through their schemes. "This is what happens when we come together," I said, my voice carrying over the applause. "We take back what's ours. We rebuild not just our homes, but our trust in each other." Behind me, neighbors hugged and shook hands, their faces alight with hope and relief. The community center, once a place of dread, had become a symbol of resilience and justice. And as Karen and Tom's house of cards finally collapsed, I knew one thing for sure: this was only the beginning of a better future for our neighborhood. I stood, letting the moment settle, feeling every eye in the room on me. With deliberate care, I placed a thick folder on the table, its contents spilling out like the weight of the evidence we'd gathered. My voice, calm but commanding, broke the silence. "This isn't just about a single bike," I said, my tone deliberate. "This is about years of deception, manipulation, and exploitation. It's about a scheme designed to hurt families, ruin lives, and profit off of fear. And tonight, it ends." Karen shot to her feet, her voice cracking like glass. "This is outrageous!" she shrieked, jabbing her finger toward me. "These accusations are lies. I've done nothing but serve this community. How dare you?" I stepped forward, pulling out a document and holding it high. "This, Karen, is proof you forged HOA bylaws to justify towing vehicles. This is a bank statement showing thousands of dollars funneled into your husband's account through your fake towing fees. And this," I handed the final paper to the forensic accountant standing beside me, "is evidence you and Tom embezzled $200,000 from this neighborhood." The room erupted in murmurs, neighbors exchanging shocked glances. Karen's face twisted in fury, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. "This is slander! You can't prove any of this! I'll have you sued for—" "Actually, I can," I interrupted, pulling up the security footage from my phone. "Everyone, take a look at Karen, directing my bike to be towed before the notice period expired. It's right here, time-stamped and undeniable." The silence was deafening as the video played on the screen behind me. Karen's face turned white as the image of her gesturing toward my bike filled the room. Neighbors gasped, some muttered angrily, "Mrs." Garcia stood and shouted, "You towed my son's bike on Christmas Eve. Is that what you call serving the community?" Mr. Thompson followed, his voice shaking with rage. "You sold my Mustang without notice. It was my life's work." One by one, more neighbors rose, their voices blending into a crescendo of anger. Stories poured out, bicycles stolen, cars auctioned off, families forced to move after being buried in towing fees. Karen attempted to rally. "Fine!" she screamed, slamming her clipboard onto the table. "You want the truth? I was doing what was necessary. Your tacky vehicles ruined property values. This neighborhood was better before people like you moved here." Before she could say more, the community center doors opened, and 2 police officers entered, carrying arrest warrants. The lead officer, Officer Rivera, who had joined our rally earlier, stepped forward. "Karen Whitmore, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and illegal property sales. Tom Peterson, you're coming with us." Tom tried to bolt, but neighbors blocked his path. Karen, now shaking, yelled, "This is a mistake! You can't do this to me! I'm the HOA president!" Officer Rivera replied coolly, "Not anymore." I turned to address the room, raising my voice above the commotion. "This neighborhood isn't ruled by fear anymore. Karen and Tom thought they could manipulate us, but tonight we proved that a true community stands together." Karen roared, "You'll regret this! All of you! I'll be back!"